In February 2013, a young woman was found dead on the rooftop of a Los Angeles hotel. The subject of much scrutiny, it became something of an internet sensation in the weeks that followed, and the circumstances surrounding her death are both mysterious and harrowing. This week, Bedtime Stories revisits the last moments of Elisa Lam. Lam Ho Yee, or Elisa Lam to her friends, was born in Vancouver, Canada on the 30th of April, 1991, to parents of Hong Kong descent. Shortly afterwards, the family settled in Burnaby, a multicultural city in British Columbia, and although Elisa had experienced a comfortable upbringing in a secure environment and had always been a happy child, she developed an early desire to travel and see the world. She had enjoyed moderate academic success, and it was at the age of 21, whilst attending the University of British Columbia, that she decided to take a trip to the United States, embarking on what she would refer to as her West Coast tour, exploring numerous regions, cities, and towns during her visit. Her parents more than likely wondered, even possibly worried, about the possibilities which lay ahead for their daughter, as they waved her off for the last time, not knowing that it would be this trip, and in particular, her stay at the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles, that would ultimately seal her fate. Sadly, they never saw their beautiful daughter alive again. The Cecil Hotel already had a notorious reputation for its history of macabre events involving guests, with at least 14 deaths by non-natural causes occurring there, including multiple suicides dating back to 1931 and the violent murder of a retired telephone operator in 1964. Notable serial killers, including Jack Unterreger and Richard Ramirez, are also known to have stayed at the Cecil. And as if that wasn't chilling enough, paranormal incidents have been documented at the hotel on numerous occasions, with some guests even reporting instances where they had felt like they were being strangled by unseen hands. Whilst it is not known for sure whether Elisa stayed here out of choice or convenience, the venue clearly had a dark reputation, and as we will discover, the Cecil would provide the setting for the events which led to yet another unforeseen tragedy. Surprisingly, a significant amount of information is known about Elisa's movements in the days leading up to her disappearance, as she was fairly active on social media, updating her Tumblr account regularly with images and commentary regarding her trip. She traveled alone via Amtrak and intercity buses, and it is agreed that she visited San Diego Zoo before finally settling at the Cecil on the evening of 28th January 2013. She was initially allocated shared hostel-style accommodation on the 5th floor, but was later moved after roommates complained about her odd behavior. This is not surprising in itself. Elisa had suffered with bipolar disorder since adolescence, which might have caused those around her to feel uncomfortable. In fact, some believe this particular detail about being asked to switch rooms is a complete fabrication on the part of hotel staff to further portray her as a mentally unstable individual and assuage any more blame against themselves. Whatever the truth of the matter, it is known that she settled into a single room by herself on that first night, and that is where she remained until the day she disappeared. On her second night, she updated her Tumblr status with an ominous post saying that she was having trouble with creepers in the hotel. A small detail, but one which would ultimately contribute to the widespread disagreements regarding the cause of her death. Elisa was last seen on 31st January buying gifts for her family Katie Orphan, the manager of a nearby bookstore, reported that she seemed to be in high spirits, describing her mood as outgoing and happy. Orphan also reported that she was alone at the time. Elisa was scheduled to check out of the Cecil on that same day, but nobody, not even hotel staff, recalled seeing her after this date. She had been in regular contact with her parents during her trip, updating them every 2 days on her whereabouts and next intended destinations. And the last time they had heard from her was on the 30th. They didn't speak to her on the 31st and became concerned by the 2nd February when she failed to get in touch. They had tried calling her several times, but there had been no answer. They eventually contacted the LAPD, reporting her as a missing person, and flew to Los Angeles to assist in the search. Initial efforts to track Elisa down proved unsuccessful. Her belongings were still in her room, untouched, though they could not locate her phone or laptop. Hundreds of man-hours went into the search. Sniffer dogs were deployed, and flyers were handed out around the neighborhood and distributed online, all of which failed to generate any leads. It was becoming more and more likely, with each passing day, that something unspeakable had happened to her, and her family began to prepare themselves for the worst. On Valentine's Day, 2 weeks after she had disappeared, the LAPD released CCTV footage of her last known sighting, taken from an elevator in the Cecil Hotel and time-stamped at 2 a.m. on the 1st February. During the short film, Elisa enters the elevator, presses all of the buttons, and awaits a response. The doors fail to close. She then steps out into the corridor, quickly peeks right, then left, and steps back in. She then backs up into the corner of the lift, nearest the control panel, as if hiding from someone, or possibly something. After a few more seconds, she steps back towards the doorway and leans against the elevator door itself, which has still failed to close. She then steps forward into the corridor, then to her left, then back into the elevator, and then back out again, this time standing mostly off camera to the left of the doorway. After approximately 25 seconds, she re-enters the elevator with both hands on her head. She then spends around 15 seconds pressing every single one of the buttons on the control panel before stepping back outside of the elevator for the final time. Once again, she stands to the left of the doorway, and it is here that the most disturbing part of the video takes shape. She begins gesticulating in a very strange way, waving her hands out to her sides, palms flat and fingers outstretched, bowing forward slightly and rocking backwards and forwards. She continues like this for almost a minute, and the last time we see her, she is walking away down the corridor in the direction she originally came from, and the elevator door closes for the first time since the start of the film. The entire video is around 4 minutes in length, a long time for somebody to consider leaving an elevator in normal circumstances. Whilst the CCTV footage disturbed a great many people when it was released online and was, in itself, rather chilling to watch, it was but a prelude leading up to the harrowing discovery made only 5 days later. Less than 72 hours after the footage was made public, guests at the hotel began complaining about low water pressure in their rooms. Some also reported that the water coming from their taps was discolored and had an unusual odor and taste. Hotel staff began to investigate, and on the morning of the 19th of February, an employee was sent to the roof to check the supply. The water was held in 4 cylindrical 1,000-gallon tanks and was pumped directly from the city's main water board. In one of them, he found Elisa's decomposing body, floating face up, a foot below the surface. The police were called, and by noon that day, the tank had been completely drained so that firefighters could cut it open and retrieve her body. Since the opening of the tank was too small to accommodate the necessary equipment, her family was notified, and an autopsy was scheduled for later that afternoon. After 2 days, the coroner's office ruled that the cause of her death had been accidental drowning, with her bipolar disorder being a significant factor. It was theorized that she had suffered from some sort of psychotic break, made her way to the roof, and had climbed into one of the water tanks by herself, not realizing the danger in doing so. The full coroner's report was not released until 4 months later, after a number of delays, and it was reported that her body had been found naked in the tank, bloated and greenish in color, suggesting that she had been there for a number of weeks. Also, in the tank, floating beside her, were the clothes which she appeared to have been wearing in the elevator video, as well as her watch and room key. No signs of physical trauma or sexual assault had been found, and there was no evidence to suggest that she had committed suicide. No traces of illicit substances were detected in her blood, although a minute amount of alcohol, as well as small traces of a prescription medication, showed up in toxicology reports. There were many unresolved issues surrounding the case, and this report did little to satisfy either her family members or the thousands of people in online forums who had been closely following the news surrounding this tragedy. Amongst the many unanswered questions was the issue of how she got up to the roof in the first place. It was reported at the time that the roof was locked off to hotel guests and that any unauthorized access would have triggered alarms. Another query arose over how she got into the tank itself, as each one was 8 feet tall and further sat on a 4-foot high concrete block, giving a total height of 12 feet. The access port was situated right on top of the tank, and there was supposedly no fixed ladder in place. So the question of how she managed to get up there was prominent during the investigation. Another issue related to this was that the lids on the ports were said to be very heavy, around 30 or 40 kilo, and many people questioned how a petite person, such as Elisa, could have lifted one of them to gain access. Furthermore, many have asked how she could have closed the lid after climbing into the tank itself. There was no way she could have reached it once inside, and as we have already established, its weight would have made closing it all the more awkward. Aside from all this, there was the elevator video, which simply confused things even further. It had become something of an internet sensation by this time, and assumptions about the cause of her death were varied and numerous. Whilst a possible psychotic break and accidental drowning are the most accepted explanations, there are others which are far more intriguing and, we're sorry to say, far more sinister. At least 2 sex offenders were known to have been living permanently at the CCL Hotel whilst Elisa had been staying there, and there are many who have drawn inevitable conclusions in this direction, theorizing that she had been murdered and dumped in the tank. There was no evidence of sexual assault, but the autopsy report noted a subcutaneous pooling of blood in her anal canal, which some observers suggested was a sign of sexual abuse. The pathologist, however, stated that this could have been due to bloating in the course of the body's decomposition, and that her rectum was also prolapsed. Whilst Elisa's actions in the elevator are most definitely odd, she does not look like someone who is trying to escape from a would-be attacker. Although it is not known how much time had passed between its recording and her death, explanations for her strange behavior, and in particular, her odd gesticulations, include the possibility that she was under the influence of recreational drugs. Even though no illicit substances were found in her blood, these could have broken down during the time her body had been in the tank. Some are even open to the idea that Elisa was temporarily possessed, describing her movements as inhuman at times, a possible connection to the Cecil's dark past and reputation for paranormal occurrences. As much as people have speculated over Elisa's actions, the video itself must be critiqued. Given that the timestamp is obscured, many now believe that parts of the hotel were used to hide someone's identity, though both parties deny this. In other parts of the clip, it appears as though footage has been slowed, and there are claims that Elisa's mouth has been pixelated in order to make it difficult to read her lips. Her death has also been linked to the Illuminati, with some people going as far to suggest that she was killed over a post she had made on Tumblr only a few weeks prior regarding a secret Canadian military project. And finally, comparisons have been drawn between this incident and a film which was released in 2005 called Dark Water, a remake of an earlier Japanese film of the same name. In it, a mother and daughter move into a rundown apartment building where a dysfunctional elevator and discolored water coming from the building's water supply eventually lead them to a rooftop water tank where they discover the body of a young girl. What's really odd about this is the fact that the daughter's name is Cecilia and the mother's name is Dahlia. The Black Dahlia was a nickname given to Elizabeth Short, a murder victim whose last known sighting was at the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles in 1947. A true case of life imitating art, and the bizarre coincidences don't end there. A TB outbreak occurred in the neighborhood surrounding the Cecil in the days after Lam's body was discovered. The screening kits they used to test patients was called Lam Elisa. This is completely unrelated to the case, but strange nonetheless. So, what happened during those last moments of Elisa Lam's life, and can any of the issues surrounding the hotel's rooftop and her strange behavior in the elevator be explained? Regarding the problem of getting to the rooftop, visitors to the hotel over the last few years have demonstrated that she could have gained access via the fire escape. Not only that, but videos posted online many years before her death show a number of youths messing around on the rooftop of the hotel, somewhat suggesting that the area was not as secure as reported. Regarding access to the water supply, images taken by news helicopters on the day her body was discovered clearly show that a ladder was chained to the side of one of the tanks, and that it was different to the ones being used by firefighters. It is thought that this belonged to the hotel, and that it had been there for some time, and whilst she might have struggled to lift the heavy lid on the tank's access port, it is not beyond all possibility that she succeeded in doing so. Furthermore, some people have suggested that the lids weren't even that heavy to begin with. Whether Elisa could have closed the lid from inside the tank depends on the water level at the time she climbed in, though it is agreed that she would have struggled to open it again, as she would have had nothing to push against. The tanks were 8 feet deep, and what about her strange behavior in the lift? If you look at it in a way that suggests She is not alone and is in fact playing a game of hide and seek with someone off camera. The video takes on a whole new meaning. It was confirmed by hotel staff that pressing numerous buttons on the elevator control panel causes the doors and the lift itself to hold for up to 2 minutes. Elisa probably would have known this. When she enters the elevator, she is not intending to ride it alone, perhaps not even to ride it at all, but to use it as a hiding place, hiding from whoever she was with at the time. She steps in, presses all of the buttons, and looks expectantly out into the hall in the direction she came from, as if waiting for someone to follow her in. When that person does not appear, she takes a quick look out into the corridor, both left and right, and then steps back in. She huddles into one of the corners, ready to jump scare whoever she is expecting. When that person still doesn't appear, she waits by the door, then goes back out into the corridor, side and back, stepping in an aimless way, which would otherwise look odd, but doesn't if you consider that she is in a playful mood. She then stands just outside of the elevator door, perhaps thinking to herself, "Where the hell are they?" When she steps back into the elevator, she looks slightly annoyed and realizes that the lift will soon start moving, so she presses all of the buttons once again to hold it in place. When she steps back out into the corridor for the final time, those strange hand movements that she does do not seem so strange if you consider that she is talking to someone she knows is there, but cannot see. Her actions suggest that she is gesturing towards the lift and saying something along the lines of, "I'm holding the elevator. Where are you?" The last thing we see her do is count on her fingers, almost as if she has had enough of waiting and is telling the person that she will count to 3, and if they haven't appeared by then, she will leave. She then waits the customary extra couple of seconds and walks off. We are quite confident that there was another presence besides Elisa, unseen in that footage. Whether they had anything to do with her death is another matter altogether. But the question is, who or what was this other presence? Were they real or imaginary, or possibly even of a paranormal nature? Did they accompany her to the roof? And did they kill her and dump her body in the water tank? Or did she die in some other way, causing whoever she was with to panic and hide her body? Did she climb into the water tank by herself? Experts have examined the film and deem that, due to her relatively focused coordination and balance, she does not appear to be under the influence of either drugs or alcohol. She was not suicidal, and even if she was, climbing into a deep, dark water tank seems like a very frightening and undesirable way to go. There is, of course, the possibility that she was experiencing a psychotic break and hallucinated that the water tank was something else entirely. But if that was the case, why would she remove all of her clothes? Whatever the true circumstances surrounding Elisa Lam's death, there is no denying that there are still many unanswered questions, and the official narrative as presented by authorities does not quite add up. One can't help but feel something is missing here, but will probably never know for certain what it is. Our hearts go out to Elisa's family, and may she forever rest in peace.